And you should
Yep,
see that on your
there you go.
screen.
Yep, yep. So you're
Okay.
all set. When you're ready to start the meeting, go ahead. And when you end the meeting, there's a, like I said, there's a little end meeting button on the bottom corner of your screen. So you guys
Okay.
are all set. Have a great meeting.
Thank you very much, Lisa.
All right.
Okay. So I'm gonna say welcome to everyone for our RTM Rules and Procedures Committee meeting. And we're going to say that we're calling this to order at, my computer says 6:10 here. So I'm gonna go with that. We have, well, this is our first meeting as the Rules and Procedures Committee for this term. So we have some new members to this from the last 2 years, and some that have stayed. Michael Whitehouse, here again, and Karen Adams as well. And then we have 2 members that unfortunately I don't see, and keep me updated if anybody else notices them, but we also have David Gauthier and Lisa Luck, who are members of this committee. But we have 3 out of our 5 people, so we have a quorum and we should be able to do the business that we have referred to us for today. We have one item that has been referred, and we have that listed in our agenda here as referral to add a Fitch High School student as an ex officio member of the RTM. So this came from Representative Chase Foster, and he had some thoughts about this, and an email went around to adding a little bit to that. So I just want to share a little bit of his background that was already shared with me so that you have that as well. So Representative Foster gave some reasons for this. He said he wanted this to be, to engage those that are politically minded in the political process and to teach them how municipal government works. This is something I wish I was exposed to when I was younger. And that 2/3 of the budget, which is the RTM's primary purpose, is the education budget. And we should hear directly from someone impacted by those decisions. And he brought up some items to be determined and how this would exactly look. One is, how is the person selected? How long are they a member? What are the pros and then he says, there are pros and cons to many solutions to these unknowns, but I trust the Rules Committee to work through them. So he's giving us some responsibility on looking at those. There was a further email, and the Board of Education policy was forwarded to me by Moderator Eben, because the Board of Education does have a student liaison. Actually, they have 2. So we can look at that as a model and go with it or not. The sun is filtering through my window right now, so if it looks like I'm on strobe light, that's why. So for the Board of Education, there is a paragraph here in their rules that designates how that is set up. They have what they call Rule 1.4, a student liaison. And it says each year 2 students, a junior and a senior, will be selected by the Board of Education to serve as student liaison representatives to the Board of Education. The junior will be selected prior to the beginning of his or her junior year, and the senior will be reappointed or selected prior to the beginning of his or her senior year. Students interested in serving as student liaison representatives to the Board of Education will be asked to submit a letter of interest to the Board of Education via their building principal and superintendent, stating why they're interested in serving on the Board of Education. The student liaison representatives will be asked to attend the first meeting of the Board of Education each month and invited to the committee of the whole meetings where they are encouraged to participate. Students can also request that items be added to the Board of Education agendas. The students cannot vote, but will be asked to sit at the Board of Education table and discuss program initiatives and activities occurring at Fitch High School. The students may also be asked to comment on relevant Board of Education agenda items when called upon by the board chairperson. So that's one idea, and after Representative Foster looked at that, he said that he liked the idea of having two, a junior and a senior, and he would recommend we ensure we select a student or students other than Board of Ed liaisons, so we increase the number of students engaged in local government. So we have that as some information, and we also have, let's see, the email from Representative Thomas Frickman. Did any of you get a chance to take a look at that as well?
I did, yep.
Yeah. So he has a model at the school that he teaches at that has worked very well for him. And this is a little bit different. Instead of the Board of Education in their case, or perhaps the RTM in our case, deciding who gets to be the student on the board based on a letter of intent, the student council at the school, that the leadership of the student council decides who would be the representative for the junior and senior. And they do also have one junior and one senior, and they ask that they commit to 2 years so that the junior becomes the senior the next year, and then you have a new person coming in as the junior. I do really like the idea of the students taking on the choice of who would be involved. He also explained that there's a requirement that the student be in good standing and I think be a member of the student council, so they're involved in some sort of government at the student level already. So we have a couple different ideas of what this could look like, and I really support that we should have some students involved with the RTM, and just want to open up the floor to the committee members here to see what you might suggest or not like about these possible scenarios.
So my first question would be kind of what does Fitch have for a student council? How robust is it as an institution? And is it something we can attach the rules to? Because if it is, then it makes sense to tie it into their structure and give them the ability to select the students and make it. I don't know if I'd necessarily make it someone in student council leadership, because there might be someone who's not in leadership who they think would be good to be the liaison.
I think it was that the
yeah.
student council leadership would choose the student, not necessarily come from student council leadership.
Well, no, he said be appointed from student council leadership.
I didn't
not. Yeah, don't look at it. Yeah, if you meant appointed by student council leadership, then yeah, that'd be great. But he said from. So, but again, it depends on if. I know some schools the student council is there some years, isn't there other years. Kind of collapses an organization. In other schools, it's a robust portion of school governance that's very active. And so that would be a very important question to get an answer to. I don't know if we have anyone here who's tight with Fitch in that way.
I do not know the answer to that. Representative Adams, did you want to try to answer that or have anything to add?
Well, I guess having a student liaison coming in might not be a bad idea, and the idea of a 2-year term does seem to make sense to me. That's about all I've got to say on it. I know myself personally, I was involved in something similar when I was in college in relation to granting tenure to particular professors in my field of study, and it was interesting. So having students wanting to find out about government and how things run might not be a bad idea.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Well, I think the other thing I think is good about it is that they're going to propagate information down to other students, and one of the values of the RTM is that it creates so much engagement in the community because we have so many seats people can get into. So it kind of expands that mission by bringing those students in, and the students are going to bring in ideas, new ideas that us old folks might not think of, because they simply have a different field of experience, and they've never seen what doesn't work. So they might be like, hey, why can't we just do this? And we all go, I don't know, why can't we do that? So they might bring in some new ideas like that.
Okay. Well, it sounds we're in agreement as far as the general idea that it would be good to put in place. I wonder, because I see that Representatives Gustafson and Thomas are here, if you have any other knowledge of the student council at Fitch High School that you'd be able to share with us.
I don't have anything about relating to Fitch. I don't. But overall, I think it's a pretty good idea. Maybe it'll raise awareness to even students not in the student council that may have, maybe they didn't know they might be interested in government. They could, maybe watch the RTM or go in person. Maybe just raise awareness to get, a little more involvement in the youth ranks. It's a good idea.
Okay.
The other thing we could do is we could make the rule empower, say, the superintendent to determine what the method is, and then discuss with them. So that way we don't have, if the student council changes structure, we don't have to change the RTM rules because it mentions the function of the student council. But I'd say superintendent, because if ever in the future we have 2 high schools or something, it makes it makes the rules flexible.
Yeah, I was thinking as to how it was worded for the Board of Education one, and they left it open to the idea that there could be multiple high schools in the way that they worded it as well. So I was wondering, how we would do that in our own. Let me just take a look at where that is exactly. Via their building principal and superintendent. As far as that, and that was a letter of interest that they were suggesting to be used there, or that they're using at the Board of Ed level. I see that the town clerk is also here and wanting to talk.
Have you started the meeting already?
We have, yes.
Oh, I thought it was at 6:30.
6 o'clock.
Oh dear, I'm sorry. I was having trouble logging into this computer, so.
No problem. Glad to have you here. Lisa got us started.
Can I just ask though, are you talking about the high school student being an ex officio?
Yes, we're talking about the referral about the Fitch High School student ex officio.
Okay, because I did a little research, and many years ago, we had high school participation on boards and commissions. They weren't ex officio, they were liaison, which really was kind of, which is really what is appropriate for a voting body. You wouldn't have an ex officio unless they had a status of staff or, a reason to be an ex officio as a staff member, like the town manager and I am for the RTM. But liaison is the perfect place. And plus it doesn't, if you change your rules for something like this, it would really bind the high school too, that they would have to, adhere to this. And you don't always have somebody interested. So just like the RTM doesn't always have a liaison, a person interested to do a liaison. So it just leaves it open. And that's just the moderator could just do that. You don't have to have a vote from the committee.
Well, one of the things to talk about, right, is exactly what would be the role for this person, and those titles, liaison or ex officio, designate something a little bit differently. We were looking at the Board of Ed policy for their student liaisons, and also some recommendations that I think you may have seen emails from Representative Frickman at the school he teaches, where they have something similar. So the questions kind of are, it seems like probably, they're not going to have voting rights. We know that. But, do they have any ability, like the Board of Education liaison has the ability to request to put something on the agenda? Does that fall under a liaison? Or would that be something different? Do we want to do that? Those are questions that we need to figure out. And let's see. Yeah, I guess those are the main functions that the person would follow through. And then how would they be chosen? That's what we've been discussing before you came on, Betsy.
That's great.
So we talked about the option that the Board of Education does where they request a letter of intent from students via building principals and superintendent. And I guess then the Board of Education picks from that. And I don't know how, that isn't spelled out in the policy. Representative Frickman recommended a process that he's been a big part of putting in place where he teaches where the student council designates, and I think he said specifically the student council leadership designates who would be appointed to the RTM and have a junior and senior member and try to have them on for 2 years so the junior becomes the senior kind of situation. I wonder if you know about Fitch High School and their student council, like how involved are people, how big is that, and does that seem like a good avenue? Because I like the idea of students choosing their representative rather than us kind of sorting through some letters at the RTM level and debating who's the choice.
I guess my first question would be, was this some member of the student body at Fitch that approached the RTM, or was this brought up from a member only?
This idea?
Correct.
As far as I know, this came from Representative Foster. And
yeah, that's what I thought, because normally it would be either something already in place like the Board of Ed has had for years, or it would be approached by a group of kids or something. But I think it's an excellent idea. Of course, it's terrific. The more involvement. We don't have an active civics course that visits the RTM or the council, which it is. That to me, that's part of civics. I'm sorry.
Do you know anything about the student council at Fitch?
It's been many years since I've had a student there, but the last 2001 was my last child graduating, and she was a class president. So I know quite a bit about that year and the years before. And they didn't have a liaison at that time at the council or RTM.
I think Representative Whitehouse was asking about that specifically, just to kind of get an idea of how involved are students in the student council. Like, is it something that kind of falters, or is it something that really has been kept up and there's a lot of interest in the school?
It's just like any other organization. It's motivated by motivated people. So if you have a group of outstanding students in that particular year, 2001, there was a bunch of very talented students. And I mean, really, there were 14 students had above 4.0 averages. So that's pretty incredible to get in AP courses. Anyway, so that group of kids, all the way through their career of schools, from kindergarten all the way through high school, were excelling, and they set the bar really high for the next group. So I think there's traditional, if you look at education, there's traditional hills and valleys. You get groups of kids come in that are very interested in a particular area. So, my daughter was a sports person, so she started the rowing team at the Fitch High School. And, that kind of, that's what she did, her claim to fame, so to speak. But so this group, this year, I haven't met any of the students that are participating, haven't had the opportunity, nor did I make the opportunity,
Okay.
So I just kind of have a solid thing to work on. I drafted up some language that could be a rule that we can talk about. It was so be add a rule 9.7 that says there may be as many as 2 student ex officio members of the RTM whose purpose shall be to share the perspective of younger town residents. These members shall be 1 student from the 11th grade and 1 student from the 12th grade residing in the town of Groton. These members shall serve a term from September 1st to August 31st of the following year. The superintendent of schools shall determine a method for selecting these student members. So I put in there may be, so if we can't find students, we're not obligated. There's seats. They can, if they can't be filled, they can't be filled. But
yeah, I guess my only question again is liaison versus ex officio. And ex officio members do not have the ability to refer anything to a committee either. So they just can be recognized like a member, so they can raise their hand and be recognized to participate in debate.
Yeah.
But they can't make a motion, and they certainly can't make a referral.
So a liaison would be a little bit different, just in that they wouldn't really be debating as well.
No, they could be. You'd be recognized. Just a liaison can be recognized from the floor. Anyone can be recognized from the floor by the chairman, or a member of the body can give the floor their time to the floor on a subject. But you don't, with a liaison, you wouldn't do that. The chairman would just recognize the liaison and say, but they would have this would be predisposed. So this would be pre-done. So your liaison normally would have a subject matter that they want to discuss, or a report that they want to give to the body. And so either the chair of the subcommittee that the person's working with, so I would say the rules committee would be working with liaisons from any student body, most likely. I can't. So your committee would already know what subject matter was going to be brought to the next meeting, So if there was a referral from there, then a member of your committee or the chair, you yourself, Chair Richards, you would make the referral on behalf of the liaison.
I see Representative Adams has her hand up.
Yeah, my thought has been more of, shall we say, disagreeing with Representative Whitehouse as far as ex officio. I think it should be more of a liaison, just as we have our RTM liaisons to the town council, the Board of Ed. The idea is to get students, letting us know what the students think. To me, that's one of the whole points of a liaison, working back and forth as far as ideas are concerned. And if we do have a liaison, somebody who's interested in being a liaison to us, that's fine. And then you're going to have those years where the student council maybe isn't quite as active, and maybe nobody's interested.
Well, but I think ex officio member, it is functionally similar. They have the same power, same abilities, but it gives them more of a sense of authority, even though they have no actual authority. It sounds fancier. And one thing about teenagers, they tend to feel disengaged anyway. They tend to feel like adults are doing things over their heads and making decisions for them, and they're not really involved in the conversation or invited to the conversation. So,
yeah, well, welcome to the real world.
Well, yeah, but we don't want to make them feel disengaged, because then instead of coming to RTM meetings, they get together 1,000 people and march down Proclonic Plains Road. So the point of this kind of democratic engagement is to give them a voice and get them engaged, and potentially, hopefully, after they're ex officio members, they'll turn 18 and be like, this is great, I'm going to run for RTM. And they want to then be involved.
They can do the same thing with being a liaison.
But sure, but it's not the message we're sending. I think ex officio sends a message that we consider them an important voice in the community. We want to hear the voice of the younger members of our population.
Well, to me, a liaison issues the same directive. We're asking for your opinion. We're asking for you to be involved. We want to hear what you have to say.
But can a liaison raise their hand during a discussion and speak? Because it sounds like they cannot. They need to be specially recognized.
The town clerk just said that they could. Isn't that correct?
That's how I understood it.
Yeah, I understand a liaison. Not, we don't have any liaisons to the RTM as such. We have RTM members that act as liaisons. So we've never behaved this way. I'm talking my experience with other committees, where ex officios are typically like past members. So they lead something to the committee because of their expertise or their position within the body, not the community, the body, you know? So like the town manager is an ex officio because of his relationship with the RTM. I am because of my relationship with the RTM. You say in the board chair and the superintendent and all counselors. You see that's why. And so to give a distinction of a ex officio, I think it would sound scary to a high schooler, because ex meaning you're not there anymore, official, officio, official, ex official. I don't want to be an ex official of anything, but a liaison that's French and sexy. Yes, I do.
I think the liaison terminology probably makes more sense, and what we can do
totally agree.
in writing it is say the liaison may speak during the meetings when recognized by the moderator, and that's their role here.
Exactly. These are your rules. You get to do what you want with your rules. You can make your liaison do that. I was just speaking on tradition and you know what people are used to, and certainly not to say that I know everything, because I don't, and I learn something new every day. We should all. But I am a mother of 4 children and have had 4 children graduate high school, and I can tell you that ex officio would not be something that they'd want to be, but liaison, they'd go for that.
The other thing is the Board of Education does have student liaisons, so it might be good to be consistent with that.
Okay.
Okay, there's a liaison to the Board of Education, there's a liaison to the RTM.
So in our rules, the word liaison is never defined, ex officio is, but we could just use the same verbiage that's in 9.2 to define the student liaison, in which case they'd be basically the same thing with a different name.
Well, let's take a look at that.
It says town manager, blah, 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 shall be ex officio members of the RTM and shall have all the rights and privileges of RTM members, except the right to make motions or to vote.
I wonder, Town Clerk, are there any rights and privileges that RTM members have that we might not want to give a student liaison?
I would just like to look at 6.3. 6.3 you might be able to rewrite 6.3. That's any person appointed by the moderator as a liaison for the RTM shall be a current member. But you could write. It'd be very simple to use this verbiage to give you what you want, and also you could add the voting. The recognition portion that you were talking about, being recognized by the moderator.
6.3 it only applies to the moderator.
6.32.
Right. That says the moderator can appoint current RTM members as liaisons to other groups.
Right, but that's a spot you could have a 6.321 for Board of Ed. High school, but that was the other thing I was thinking. The Board of Ed liaison. They're too busy to have them do both RTM and Board of Ed, but that's what my thought was, you know.
Yeah, I don't think we'd want to have the same person who's doing Board of Ed. We might want to explicitly exclude that.
I think that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Kate, can I say something? Sorry, I don't know where the...
Sure, go ahead.
I think that 6.3 is really about, as Michael said, about me appointing someone who's already elected to the RTM to liaise with, a body like the Economic Development Commission. So I think it would be more appropriate to be under a section on membership. I'm looking at the rules right now, desperately trying to find that. It could go under general at the end, I guess, section 9.
Where the other membership information is in the charter and not in the RTM
rules. So it would be under 9.2 where it says ex officio, or you could make a new 9 point something. I think that would be a more correct place for it. But I'm not sure you want your liaison, or whatever you end up calling that person, ex officio would be the same, to have the right to make motions. I think I would think you'd want them to participate, to have input. Maybe, I mean, this is up to you, but I would think you might want to consider that ability as something, whether or not you want to do it.
Yeah, I think they would not have the right to make motions or vote.
Okay.
They
Yeah.
could just, yeah. They
But
could, and in theory, they could be appointed to committees, as this is worded, but you'd have to appoint them. So,
I think, having them on, I'd be happy to appoint them if education was a place they were interested in. That would be fine. I'd be happy to ask them whatever committee they prefer to serve on, and they could have multiple committee appointments since they wouldn't be part of the quorum. I don't think it would make that much difference if they had energy and enthusiasm to be on multiple committees. I think that would be terrific. They're not going to change the quorum. They're not going to be an official member either way, as ex officio or liaison. So I'm going to bow out and let you guys decide, but there you go. I think section 9 is the place to put it.
Okay, thank you, Moderator Eben. So I'm going to recommend one thing. I think the general area does make sense as well. And I also see how liaison and something separate from the other things that are put in 9.2 right now that are the ex officio members. It would be good to have some separation from that with this student person, because the student is not part of some other government body that's connecting with the RTM. This is a different situation. So how about doing something like Rule 9.2.1? So it's next to that, and a similar.
I was going to say 9.7, but yeah, I guess 9.2.1 works too.
And calling it a student liaison to the RTM. And
yep, I've updated the wording I drafted here if you want me to read it again.
Well, I had one thing also to discuss before that, and that is, I think when you wrote that draft, you had said as many as 2. Do you think it's important to designate a junior and a senior?
No, I'm just thinking about taking that out, because that might be, again, we might send notes along to the superintendent, be like, what we were thinking was this, but do what you think is best, because there could be 2 great juniors and no senior. And that would be silly if we had two juniors, one sitting on the bench, and because there's no senior available, or there could be a brilliant sophomore that is really engaged and would do well in it. So yeah, I think leaving that, I don't think necessarily needs to be specified in the rules.
I don't know. I like the idea of somebody starting as a junior and potentially staying for a second year and having some more consistency, and then a new person coming in as a junior the next year, and kind of show the older person showing the younger person the ropes in a way, and trying to find somebody who's a junior, senior. I'm sorry, I cut you off there. Representative Adams, did you want to respond?
Oh, well, no, I was just saying I totally agree with that. I think it should be, if you want to use the word limited, to a junior, senior.
Okay.
And the consistency of a 2-year term of the junior, then automatically when he or she is a senior serves again, and then you bring in a new junior. Yeah. I like that idea better.
I think that'd be something to recommend to the superintendent, if we have the superintendent actually setting up the process instead of codifying it, just so there's some flexibility depending on the situation.
Well, that's another. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Representative Adams.
My whole thing is the student body involvement, not the Board of Education.
Yeah, I think I would rather have the student council making the decision.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
The student liaison.
Yes.
And the superintendent.
Just as we, the RTM, we do the liaison to whatever committees that we want to have a representative to. I feel it would strictly be up to the student council.
Okay. Yeah. Because we need the flexibility. Should there be a second high school, or should the student council change identity and structure? But if we basically charge the superintendent with determining a method for allowing the student body to select these student members.
I think it's more a matter of the interest that a student would have, just as moderator Eben will ask for someone interested to be a liaison to committee X. If you're interested, you're going to let her know, gee, that sort of kind of interests me. I'd like to see if I could be the liaison. I think the same thing would be with the students. The student council would make this information or this opportunity, shall we say, available to the junior and senior classes. And then if there are students who are interested, then they go from there. I mean, obviously, there can be more than one student who is interested, and then it's a matter of the council, the student council, doing the, shall we say, interviewing type of deal, like interviewing for a job, so to speak, because, yeah, it's going to be a job.
But again,
and
this assumes
whether or not for the student that there may be any kind of extra credit involved.
I'm going to recognize the town clerk next. She's had her hand up.
Okay.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Karen.
Okay, thanks. This is terrific dialogue, and I'm glad that you're finding a place for this. But keep in mind that juniors in high school, that is usually their core, their greatest difficulty for academics, because what they do in their junior year is in their transcripts when they're applying for college in the first semester of their senior year. Or with some kids apply in their junior year. Lots of them do. So that's something to keep in mind. Senior second semester is usually a super breeze, and they're having a blast. So, just putting a label as to what you're going to accept is maybe you may want to consider just saying, volunteers in your, I think that people are interested will know their schedule. They know what they can do. You might get, one or two from a junior class, or you might have, like you said, a sophomore who is interested and will carry through. It's not that taxing, especially since the meetings are broadcast. So, you can, if you miss the meeting, if the liaison misses the meeting, they can watch the meeting, and then hopefully whatever they transcribed to the committee, to whatever committee they're assigned to, that information was passed on, and they wouldn't miss something. But I don't know. I just know from my own experience with my kids what they can handle as far as extracurricular. And I don't know, like Representative Adams was saying, as far as credit for participation, again, that would go with a civics class or some sort of government, labeled type of class. There may be something, I don't even know what the curriculum has anymore.
Yeah, well, God only knows.
I imagine as well that, I hear what you're saying, that it might be difficult for a junior to juggle some of the things going on, but it might also be really good for them to be putting on their college application, this is what I'm doing right now.
Also good. Yeah.
And have that as an experience that they bring to it.
Yeah, I was just bringing that in as saying, so don't label that you only will accept a junior or a senior, because what if you did get a sophomore or even a freshman that, and I'm sure that my kids would have jumped at the chance. Not, I'm serious, they wouldn't. Anything political, they run away from.
Okay, how about the idea of having, like we said, two, and asking them to commit to 2 years, but not necessarily saying what year they have to be in the high school at the time when they start? Is that?
Yeah, I just think
some of this criteria.
Yeah, I just don't know. This would have to be, think about it. Just mull it over. Do you have to have a criteria so stiff that they can't commit to it? They don't know what their following year. What if they get a job and they can't fulfill it? It really becomes difficult to put. I think that having the liaison is terrific, because then you'll find out what's going on. But whether or not it'll be the same person for 2 years, you're lucky if you get that. I just don't think if you put a criteria on it, you're going to get it. That's what I'm trying to get to. So
Yeah.
say say you're going to have 2 kids, but what if 4 kids want to do it? You're going to limit it? No, you wouldn't.
I don't know. We were talking about limiting it to 2.
Yeah. If there's no real reason to, the more the merrier.
Well, I see that Representative Foster has joined us. And so maybe I'll ask Representative Foster if you want to add any input to the things we're talking about here, or if we can rehash anything that you might have missed that you're interested in. Representative Foster?
Oh, he's muted.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, sorry I'm late. I've missed all the discussion up to this point. So I don't know what I can add at this point because I'm not sure what's been discussed over the last 15 minutes. So I'm sorry that I'm late to the meeting.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad to have you
Can I read
here.
the
We have one point that we're kind of debating right now that I'll just share, and I'll sum up real quick since you were the person to first bring this to us. We were talking about calling this person a liaison rather than ex officio, because ex officio members often are members of other entities that kind of join one, or maybe a retired member of something. And the Board of Ed calls theirs a student liaison as well. But to explain in the way that we're writing this, that it would be somebody who is able to take part in discussion, but not make a motion or to vote. And then we were talking about just now, well, a couple things, how they would be chosen, and then if we would limit it to a junior senior, or have it more open to a certain number of people, or even more open than that. So the options as far as how they would be brought up and chosen would be either by the student council, maybe more open from the superintendent, or we could model it on the Board of Education kind of process. But we were leaning more towards the student council. We just don't have a lot of inside knowledge as to the high school student council and what they're doing.
Okay, sorry, that's my dog going crazy.
What do you think about those ideas?
How does the Board of Ed select the liaisons?
So they request through the principal and superintendent letters of intent from students, and it doesn't spell out exactly what they do from that, but I assume the Board of Education reviews those, or the superintendent does, and they choose somebody. Representative Frickman put forward a model that he uses at the school he teaches and he helped to form, where the student council designates who would be appointed. And I really like that idea that the students would be making a choice about who would be involved, but this is open.
So I've revised the version. I think includes a lot of things we talked about and might solve some of those questions. So I changed it to that there may be as many as 2 student liaisons of the RTM whose purpose shall be to share the perspectives of younger town residents. These members shall reside in the town of Groton. These members shall serve a term from September 1st to August 31st of the following year and may be reappointed. The superintendent of schools shall determine a method to allow the student body to select these members, ideally through the student council, as well as a method to fill vacancies in this role. And then student liaisons shall have all the rights and privileges of RTM members except the right to make motions or vote. So that way, if the student council shifts, changes identity, there's 2 high schools, whatever, there's someone whose job it is to figure out how the students are involved in that. But they're developing a method to allow the students to select it in some fashion. But still has flexibility, so we're not rewriting our bylaws because the student council split into 2 bodies or disbanded or whatever.
Well, there's a couple things with that. I don't think you specified how many student liaisons in that, did you?
There may be as many, there may be as many as 2 student liaisons.
As many as 2.
Mm-hmm.
So
to the.
We can talk about agreement on that point. And also, I'm not sure that I would put all the rights and responsibilities of RTM members, except I think I would put in more positively are able to be recognized and take part in discussion and debate, and not to vote or make motions. I see that town clerk has her hand up. Is that a new hand up?
That was an accident. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, the main thing is they can speak. They don't really have to be able to do anything else. So yeah, we can change that. I have no problem with that. So liaisons shall have the privilege of being recognized to speak during meetings.
So this
members
is not addressing, should we have more than 2? Should we designate a junior or a senior? Should we ask for a 2-year commitment from anybody?
Yeah.
Representative Foster, do you have any thoughts on that?
So in terms of the length of time, I was just thinking in terms of how many additional people that you could get exposure to this. So if you had a 2-year term limit for 2 people, then that kind of limits the other people in those grades that are progressing through, especially if they're only juniors and seniors. If it was 1 year, you had 2 people, that would open it up to potential 2 other people getting the opportunity to be involved. That was kind of what I was struggling with, because the con in having a short time period is that they don't really, I guess they would make it through a budget cycle, and that's a big thing. Yeah, I was struggling personally trying to think those things through, which is why I kind of left it open, because I don't know what the if there's a perfect answer, but maybe a single year makes sense.
Yeah, we can put together kind of a consensus from the Rules and Procedures Committee here and propose that to the full RTM, but it's still certainly open to amendments and changes with the full RTM. So this isn't the end of what it could look like. And, we can talk about the pros and cons of some of those things with the full RTM body as well. But I do have the same kind of conundrum as you, I think, in that it's nice to have somebody who's there for 2 years. There's some consistency and some kind of knowledge passed on to the new person. But that does limit also in some ways how many people are involved.
Yeah, I think the 2 years is important, because otherwise you have permanent competency. It means basically every time a student gets up to speak, they're probably speaking for the first time they've ever spoken on this issue. Because once they're in the second year, the same thing happens to us RTM members. First year RTM members get up and the experienced members are like, oh my God. And so if the students are all first year members, everything they say is going to be, they're never going to be speaking from experience. And I think having, and the way I word it is they may be reappointed. So it doesn't say 2-year terms. It just creates a possibility of 2 years. But I think it's important to have some degree of longevity, so that, when you go through your second budget cycle, you are a lot more competent to speak than when you go through your first budget cycle.
And, we can request a commitment of 2 years, but things happen and that might not follow through, and there might be a change, and, that's okay. But I think it would be good to try to encourage somebody to stay on for 2 years if possible.
I think also
that makes sense, just as we being elected for a 2-year term, but you never know within that 2-year time frame whether something in your personal life comes up that you need to resign. So would work the same way with any of the liaison. Even if the person is figuring I can do this for 2 years, but say for argument's sake, the father gets a job someplace else and the family has to move. Therefore, the student has to resign.
Right.
We could talk about this all night, but I feel that we need to come to an ending on this, because it needs to be discussed amongst the entire RTM membership.
So we could also, again, put flexibility into that. So my thought about having 2 is that if you have 4. If you have 2, it's limited. So people say, oh, there's only 2 seats. I want one of those. Once you get to 4, then it's like, how do we find 4 kids? We got 3, you got a pulse, you want to be on there. But if we gave, say, the moderator the authority to increase that number, or someone the authority to increase that number, then it means that if there were multiple good ones, they could potentially expand it, or we could limit it to two. Because I mean, when you think about it, how many students actually would want to be involved in government, and now there'll be 2 spots on the Board of Ed and 2 spots in the RTM.
All right. Well, I'm going to suggest something that we can vote on, a couple of alterations to what you've proposed there, Representative Whitehouse. How about we say that we have as many as 2 and leave it as 2, with the thinking that, kind of see how that goes and how easy it is. If there's so many people interested, we can always change and open up that number in the future if we needed to.
Totally agree.
And to put in there that we ask for a 2-year commitment as possible.
Okay.
To try to encourage some consistency for the person who's involved there. And I don't know if we need to say junior and senior in particular. I'm okay with leaving that out myself right now, but I would be okay with putting that in too. And I really do like the student council making the decision rather than the superintendent.
No, well, that's what it says. It says the superintendent determines how the student council makes the decision.
Right. So I'd like taking the superintendent part out of that.
The student council is not a strictly defined body.
Well, it's something that we need to, I think, investigate a little bit more to learn about the student council.
But will it exist in 10 years? That's what I'm writing this for.
Yeah, I see your point. I do.
Well, your RTM rules can change every year too. Remember that.
Yeah, but the lag time from us realizing there's no student council to realizing we need to change our rules to.
Just because we have a liaison position open does not necessitate the fact that there's going to be anybody who wants to be the liaison. So there could possibly be years that we have no student liaison.
This is true.
Right,
yeah.
But I wouldn't want it to be because there is a student who wants to do it, but there's no functioning student council to appoint them.
Okay, Representative Adams, what do you think about the wording for this particular section? Should we leave it up to the superintendent to determine the method, or to have it straight from the student council or student body?
Well, I would think it would have to be more the student council and the school principal, not the superintendent of schools. You're dealing with a school. Granted, the superintendent is for all the schools, but I would think that the principal of the high school would be much more involved with the student council than the superintendent is.
Well, that's interesting because that fits in with something that the Board of Ed does. Maybe we could say the building principal, and that would perhaps, if say someday there was another high school, the high school building principal would bring to the student body, or I don't know how we should word that exactly.
Well,
I mean, even just the high school principal,
yes,
even if we have more than one high school, you're just talking about the principal of the high school. If there are 2 high schools, then you would be dealing with 2 principals.
Well, I think
I don't.
To get 2 high schools is a bit of a process, whereas the collapse of the student council is not. So I think if we pass the bonding to build a second high school, I think we'll notice we need to change our rules about interfacing with the high school.
Fair enough.
And the likelihood of building another high school is slim and none.
Yeah, but more I thought the student council could disappear without us noticing. And then be like, didn't we used to have liaisons? Where'd they go? But so I changed it to the high school building principal shall determine a method to allow the student body to select these student members, ideally through the student council, as well as a method to fill vacancies in this role.
Okay, I think I can
Can we vote on something, please?
Yeah, what do you think about that proposal that we just put through? Have you updated your chat there at all?
I'm putting it there, and then I will read it too, so we're legal for anyone recording.
Thank you.
Add Rule 9.7 to read, there may be as many as 2 student liaisons to the RTM whose purpose shall be to share the perspectives of your town residents. These members shall reside in the town of Groton. These members shall serve a term from September 1st to August 31st the following year. Preferably, each individual liaison will serve for 2 terms. The high school building principal shall determine a method to allow the student body to select these student members, ideally through the student council, as well as a method to fill vacancies in this role. Student liaison shall have the privilege of being recognized to speak during meetings in the same manner as members.
I think we should also be explicit and say that the student liaisons may not vote or make a motion.
Okay. These liaisons.
Although the Board of Ed student liaisons are able to request an agenda item to be added, we could consider that, but I think
yeah, we don't tend to add agenda items anyway, like they do.
Yeah,
so.
I think that's probably fine just to say those 2 things.
And members can bring up discussion topics during other business anyway. So that's where they'd be able to say, hey, I got a thing I want to talk about.
Okay.
So as added, although they may not vote or make motions.
Okay.
Which is redundant but explicit.
This is similar. I think also under communications might be where they might want to speak as well.
Okay. Well, I mean, they can speak because they're residents under communications, right?
No, that's citizens petitions. Communications is when members have information that they would like to communicate. And they could be from the school or from something, in their world.
Okay.
Do you want it?
Or they could speak under liaison.
Add that to 6.
Yeah, I was just going to say, wouldn't liaison reports? I mean, normally our liaison reports are our members being a liaison to other committees. But if we have a student liaison member to the RTM, I would think that they would be able to speak or should be able to speak under liaison reports.
What would they be reporting on, though? They're not going to a committee and reporting back.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's true too.
I think that would be moderator discretion. One moderator may say, "Oh, you're a liaison. We have a liaison report section. You're going to speak."
I don't think we need to
one.
clarify that particularly in this. I think we can leave that particular component out if you're all right with that.
Yeah. So I just added that last. So it's everything's in the chat. Plus, although they may not. No, I'll just add that. Although they may not vote or make motions. Cool.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Whitehouse, for doing the typing. It's hard for me to do all things at once. So I appreciate that.
30 years as a gamer, I'm good at codifying rules.
So Representative Whitehouse and Adams and myself, we can now vote if we would like to recommend this to the RTM. I thought I saw the town clerk's hand, but now it's down. So I guess we'll go ahead with that. Okay. If you agree with this recommendation, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Any nays? Abstentions? Nobody else is here, so I guess we're good. Okay. So 3-0-0 to recommend this to the RTM, which I will report on at our meeting for the month of, where are we now? July, coming up.
In 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks. Town Clerk, I see your hand.
I just wanted to say this is terrific. You guys are, this is a great, really efficient committee. And I have a question for Representative Whitehouse. I was noticing his gaming chair and just wanted to know the make and model.
I will have to look that up and get it back to you, but it is so much better than my old chair because I'm spending
I know
12
my
hours a day in it now.
My youngest son is a big gamer, and the chair that I got for him a couple of years ago just it didn't last. Let's put it that way.
I can't tell if it lasts because it's only 2 months old, but it's been pretty good so far now. It's like $110.
Okay. So that ends the business we have on the agenda. I did bring something else up to Moderator Eben regarding the letter that we had from one of my constituents in District 6 and former RTM member Annie Rogers. And she, in that letter I read, had asked if the RTM could consider having some compensation for childcare for RTM members to help encourage people who otherwise might find it difficult to participate in politics to get involved. And the town clerk did forward that we have in our town charter something that is in opposition to that, saying that we can't provide compensation for elected officials except for reimbursement in some particular cases, and this is not one of them. So I just wanted to say that, you know, I wanted to put that out there and just ask if anybody had anything that they wanted to recommend related to that, if that interested them in some sort of change. But it looks like that would be a town charter change. That would not be something we could do at the RTM level. I see Representative Foster.
Yeah, so I was thinking maybe the RTM could just ask the town manager to look at grants to see if there's other money available to support this outside of it being directly funded from the town.
That's an interesting idea. Yeah, I did think about that too. I didn't think about grants in particular, but yeah, we can certainly consider that. And the town clerk, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, that was exactly one of the same vein of thought that I had. Grant money also, there's no reason why there can't be a fundraising effort.
Yeah.
And I know the library does this, and so does the beautification committee. They raise funds. So I don't see, I don't see why we couldn't do that. The town certainly can, that you can account for it. It's for a specific purpose, and you would have vouchers. There would be a way to track, for the logistics of it. But again, I'd rather pass it through the town attorney. I really would. So maybe the moderator, I can ask the town attorney if you'd like, if this is something that we could do before we start, investigating it.
Yeah, if you would
absolutely
ask about that, I'd really appreciate hearing that, and I guess possibly reporting back on that at one of our RTM meetings so that everybody has that information and we can see if there's something we should take action on.
As soon as I get the information, I'll share it with everyone.
Representative Foster, did you have another thing to say?
Well, it's just interesting that the town clerk brought up the library, because they do have the teen room. Maybe if they could just stay open later on the nights that the RTM is going. I know that doesn't really support really young children, but this is an option. I don't know if the librarian might be able to say whether or not that's possible.
Yeah.
You're unattended though. It can't be unattended.
Yeah, my mom is a retired Groton librarian. My guess would be this probably wouldn't be a way that they would extend library hours, because RTM meetings can get pretty late. Library usually ends at 9, but we'll maybe just put that in our bucket here of ideas until we hear back from the attorney and explore those a little bit more. Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn. Okay, I will accept a motion to adjourn. Shall we vote on that? Anybody who's saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. No nays? No abstentions? Okay, we're 3-3-3-0-0 and we are done. So I'm going to stop the recording here.